All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started for the sake of time. Um, I appreciate you joining us today. Today, we're going to talk about creating portfolios for transition age students. And my name is Carrie Potter. I am an educational support coach with Family Matters. And I just want to go over some housekeeping information at first. I do want to say Family Matters is not a legal services agency, so we can't provide any form of legal advice or legal representation, and any information that you receive from Family Matters is not intended as legal advice and should not be used as a substitution for legal advice. And so on this slide, you'll see, Family Matters contact information. If you need to contact us outside of this presentation for further assistance, to learn more about our services, things like that, feel free to reach out by phone or email. You can also message us through our website. And so just to cover a little bit of information about the services we provide, we do offer an educational advocacy helpline. We have 2 educational support coaches who work through the helpline and cover those calls. That would be myself and Abby. And so we take calls out of the 94 counties that we serve in the state and just help parents navigate the special education process, help them understand their rights. We can work with students as well, professionals. So, if you have specific questions about the educational process, we can help you better understand that process, connect you with resources, things like that. We also offer an educational support or educational surrogate parent program, and so this educational surrogate parent program is funded through the Illinois State Board of Education. Family Matters holds the grant for this training, and so ESPs or educational surrogate parents, or the ESP training, is a program that trains individuals to become advocates, educational advocates for children in the care of the state of Illinois. So if you're interested, think you might want to become an ESP, feel free to contact our office. Our staff can give you more information about that program, what that entails, when the training dates are. There's a training that you can go through to become an ESP, and they can walk you through more of that. We also offer what we call Compass. It used to be our volunteer advocacy project or program. That is currently going on. We currently offer that once a year. Currently, it is a 10-week course, and it covers different special education topics and helps you become more familiar with the special education process, rights, things like that. If you're interested in that, like I said, it's currently going on, but you could always get on a list for interest for next year. So if you do want to learn more about Compass, let us know. And then we also offer trainings, like we offer webinars, live trainings. If you're interested in potential training, let us know. We'd be happy to look at what type of training you're wanting and offer that. You can find a copy of today's PowerPoint in the chat, along with maybe some other information Abby will be posting in there. I do want to say we will have a survey that you will get at the end of today's session. So please take time to complete that and give us, that helps give us feedback. We want your honest feedback on our services, our trainings, things like that. So please take the time and fill that out so that gives us more data and stats to help improve our trainings and know how we're doing. So this webinar is being recorded and it will be archived on our website. Our website, again, was listed on that slide. It's listed on here as well, so you can find that in our PowerPoint. We will answer questions. I'll hold those to the end today. But if you have questions and you don't want to forget them, feel free to put those in the chat. We'll check those at the end of today's presentation. And, we want to make sure we have time to get through everything and then take those questions at the end. So feel free to, put them in the chat if you want, or hold on to those so you can ask those at the end. So I think we're ready to jump into today's presentation and what we're going to cover. So following today's presentation, we're hoping that you're able to walk away with, more knowledge about portfolios for transition age students. We hope that you can determine a purpose for creating a personal portfolio, whether for your child, a student you serve, or if you're a self-advocate, creating a personal portfolio for yourself. Determine, what purpose that portfolio could serve for you. We also hope you walk away and you're able to determine what items to include in a portfolio and to compile that information, how to compile it. And also walk away being able to create your own personal portfolio or assist others in creating portfolios. So we're focusing on portfolios for transition age students and how that could be helpful for a student who's transition age. But I think a portfolio can be helpful at any age. I mean, you could start working on a portfolio even before a student reaches transition age, or even after students exit high school, it can be helpful. So transition in Illinois begins at 14 and a half, and so it continues until that student graduates or they reach 22 when they finish school. So it just depends, how long they stay in school, but it does begin in Illinois at 14 and a half. And transition is preparing for students for life after high school. So it's preparing, students start thinking in high school or even before high school, about what their life may look like, what they may want it to look like after high school. So when they start that transition process in Illinois, they're going to start that at 14 or 14 and a half, and really start thinking about what do I want to do after high school? Like, where do I want to live? Where do I want to work? Do I want to continue my education, go straight to work? What kind of colleges are there or different education programs that I could attend? What kind of supports and things can I get after high school? But really thinking about, like, what do I want my adult life to look like after school, and what steps do I need to take during high school to help me get closer to achieving those goals for after adult life after high school. So the IEP really helps, is supposed to help students prepare and take steps for that adult life. So if a student's interested in going to college and maybe wants to work in the medical field, then they might talk to their IEP team about what kind of classes can I take in school that are going to help me prepare to work in the medical field. Or if I want to work on cars, what can I take? What classes are going to help me prepare for that end goal? If you're wanting to work in the medical field, what kind of colleges do I need to be connected with? Do I need to figure out what kind of supports and services I can get going to college, since I've had an IEP, 504, things like that? It's important to really take the steps to prepare for those end goals and being connected to supports for adult services and, accommodations and supports at colleges, things like that, and just using high school to work towards those goals. So transition, like we said, it really helps the student and the entire IEP team learn about student interest, what works, what doesn't work, really look at their skills, their talents, and who can help them really work toward achieving those specific goals that they have for themselves. So, transition should really focus on that student, their individual needs, figuring out, what they're interested in, why they're interested in that, what steps they can take towards achieving those goals. So, you have, it feels like, 4 years in high school, but it goes by quick. So you really want to use those 4 years to prepare for adult life. And some students have more than 4 years, in high school. So we want to talk about what is a portfolio. So a portfolio is really just a compilation of materials that are going to showcase personal achievements, different talents a person has, what their skill sets are. So you really, I think, as an IEP team or a parent or friends of a student who's creating a portfolio, can really help a person identify, their talents, their skill sets. They help them determine, what would be good things to include in a portfolio. What are some personal achievements you're proud of? What are some talents or skill sets you have that you might want to highlight in a portfolio? But a portfolio is just a place where you can combine all of that information and compile it and be able to show it to people, like future employers, things like that. creating a portfolio, like we said, it showcases that student or person's abilities, their talents, what they're good at, what skill sets they have. And it can help, a portfolio can really help a student prepare for adult life. It can help them start thinking about, what is it that I'm good at? What is my goal for education, work, training? Where do I want to live? What are my goals? And like in compiling, knowing what your goals are, identifying those, and compiling information and really understanding your abilities, your talents, things like that can help you think more about what skill sets do I want to showcase in this portfolio to help me? What do I want to display to people in this portfolio? So, a portfolio, again, it's a compilation of all this information, and it can really help showcase what a student's or a person's abilities are, what they have to offer. And that can be used to show to a lot of different people. What can you include in a portfolio? You can include a lot of things, accomplishments. If there are different accomplishments made in school, maybe you've made honor roll in school, you want to show that, I've accomplished this, I've had good attendance in school, things like that. Any awards you've received in school, you could showcase that in your portfolio. Graduation, if you've graduated, that's an accomplishment you could showcase in your portfolio. Like, look, I've graduated, earned my diploma or my certificate. Any awards, like we said, if you've won awards for public speaking or sports or anything like that, those could be included in that portfolio. Some students may have had the opportunity to sit in on boards or committees, so they could include information on that, like if they've sat in on some teen board for their local library, different things like that. They could include that. If they've done volunteer work, that would be something that would be helpful to include to show what experience they've had, because volunteer work still shows that you've had some work experience, even if it's not paid. If you've helped work at a local food pantry, volunteered at a nursing home with activity time, or helping fold laundry or something at a nursing home, if you've volunteered, working with students, like going and reading books to a student, volunteered at a local, like a community place, like a library, things like that, that could all be included in a portfolio. Some students gain job shadowing or work experience. So if this is something that's been gained or something a student has experienced, they could put in that information into their portfolio. It could help just show, again, what type of work experience they've had. Maybe a student has done some job shadowing in a certain area, like job shadowed somebody at an office or the mechanic shop, and they really fell in love with a job and they're pursuing a job in that career. They could show that they've had that job shadowing experience and really, liked that experience, and that's why they're interested in pursuing a career in that. And then also any classes or courses. Like we said, if a student says that they're interested in going to college into the medical field, they may have talked to their IEP team members about what classes could I take? So if they've taken classes, if they're interested in the medical field, if they've taken classes like biology or other medical classes, anatomy, things like that, that would be beneficial to the medical field, they could include that in their portfolio. Just really show kind of what experience they've had as far as education. Any activities or recreation can be included too if a student is committed to, scouts or activities through their local library, bowling leagues, anything like that. They could include all of that in their portfolio to show, they've been committed to different activities for so many years and, what accomplishments they've made, what they've learned from those activities, include photos, things like that. A student could also include a resume. This would be another skill they could be taught and work on with their IEP team. Learning to create a resume is helpful. And so it's something that could also be included in that portfolio and would really, be helpful to showcase their experiences. So other things that could be included if a student has attended different conferences or training participation, if they've done any type of just attending conferences on certain topics, maybe they've attended different disability or self-advocacy conferences, they could include that information in their portfolio. They might also have participated in trainings, maybe even help present at trainings or spoke. If they've had that type of experience, that could be included. If they have pictures from those experiences, they could include photos or just bullet point information in their portfolio. They could also include information about their family or their support system. Who is their support system that is there to support them throughout all these processes. Could be family, could be friends, people in the community. And then accommodations. I think it's important when a student's able to identify and explain what accommodations or supports they may need in different working conditions or at school. That's a form of self-advocacy. And so that's, something that can definitely be worked on when creating a portfolio and, working through the IEP process, but just identifying what accommodations are helpful for them is important. And that's something that could be important for those that are viewing a portfolio to see. Also, if there's important medical history, they could include whether to disclose that or not. If they carry something like an EpiPen, maybe they would want to, list that in their portfolio. So like when they may need it, things like that, what their allergy is, different things like this is how, we handle the situation, or this is an important thing to know about me so that people know how to react in situations. That could just be something that is included in that portfolio. Also, community involvement, like we said, if you're volunteering or involved in anything in your community, volunteer work, or just part of a church or different programs, that could be helpful as well. Something that a student may be proud of to include in their portfolio. Any quotes, artwork, photos. So if they have, if they love art and are a good artist, they could include artwork in their portfolio to highlight that. Any photos that are important to them that kind of give visuals to what they're outlining in their portfolio could be helpful. We said graduation is a big milestone for any student. So a lot of times that's something that students are very proud of and something that they may want to highlight in their portfolio. Again, you can include photos. Maybe it would be a good section to include things about awards and such that you've gained in school, things like that. So graduation, again, is like one important area that they could highlight in their portfolio. If they've gained awards like public speaking or they're an Eagle Scout, things like that, it's something, definitely they can include. Maybe if they've, some libraries have like a local summer reading program or different things like that, or even a winter reading program. If they've accomplished something like that, set a personal goal for themselves and met that, that's something they could potentially include. These are just some ideas that we had about different awards that could be included in the portfolio. If you have any other ideas of awards that could be included in a portfolio, feel free to put those in the chat. I'll just give you a minute to do that. Okay, I'm not seeing anything in the chat right now, so I'll just move along. Again, we talked about board members. So some students have the opportunity to sit on a committee or a board. I've known of students who have sat on committees for maybe like a teen board sat on a teen board for a local library, had that opportunity. And so that was something that they wanted to highlight in a portfolio. So any experience that they may have, as far as being a board member, we don't often think of students as being board members, but more adults sometimes, but there are opportunities for students to be a member of a board or a committee. Maybe they've sat on student council or held a title that way. That might be something that they would be, wanting to include in their portfolio to show that, I ran for this is something I accomplished, or I applied for this opportunity and was successful in being part of that board and being elected to that board. So we also talked about volunteering. So I've known of students who have volunteered at food pantries to just kind of get a feel for work experience and to help out. I've also known of students to volunteer at their local library, maybe, helping with craft prep for story time. Some students I've heard of volunteering at an animal rescue where they work with cats or different animals in a rescue center and just get on a schedule to volunteer weekly or through the summer, things like that. It gives them an opportunity to kind of, volunteer. It may not be a paid position, but it's still something where you're gaining that experience, and that is something that a future employer may look at and say, oh, you've had this experience, that would be helpful. And sometimes volunteer experiences can turn into paid experiences. Could be like a local nursing home is looking for people to help with activity time or, folding laundry, things like that. So, just looking for opportunities in your community or, students being involved in those is something that can really serve well in being highlighted in a portfolio. Again, we said if a student has experienced job shadowing, that's something that could be included. Really talking to the student about what is it you're interested in, why are you interested in that. Sometimes you look at a student may think they want to work in nursing or something like that, and they get that job shadowing experience, and then they can make an educated decision on whether or not that's a job they want to pursue. But if it's something they've had experience in, they could determine whether or not that's something that they want to include in their portfolio, or even if it's an experience that they still gain some knowledge of that career and, could still highlight that they have had that experience and determined whether they wanted to pursue that career or not. It still, would give them that experience to document. Any activities that a student's involved in can be helpful to include. We kind of talked about that, like book club, 4-H, Scouts. With Scouts, you can, earn your Eagle Scout and different badges and things. Those are all things that could be highlighted in that portfolio. And 4-H, book clubs, if they're reading a lot of books and things like that, they could, in joining those book clubs and setting goals for themselves, again, those are things that they could involve in their portfolio. This is just an example of a resume. You can pull resumes from so many different places, I'm sure, like Canva or Microsoft Word. Just looking online, you could work with a student on preparing a resume. Even if they haven't had paid experience, we've worked with students before to create resumes, just, explaining this is their year of graduation. These are volunteer experiences or job shadowing experiences that they've had, and something to, share with a potential employer that can be helpful. There are a lot of different conferences and trainings students can attend if they've attended different trainings or academic conferences or things like that, or opportunities through school or even outside of school, like Speak Up, Speak Out is a disability related training. That's all important to share. They could, again, take photos if they've taken photos of trainings or at these academic experiences through school. Those could all be included in that portfolio. Again, your support system is another important area. And I know some students we've worked with have liked their pet is a good support for them, and they want to include a picture of their pet to show this is something important to me. And sometimes that can even show, I think, responsibility. They have taken care of that pet, they're in charge of walking that pet, things like that. Accommodations, we said it's important for a student to understand what supports are helpful and what accommodations are helpful for them. Some students use things like audiobooks through maybe Learning Ally or Bookshare. Those could be helpful information for your portfolio. So just showing these are things that help me to be successful, or maybe having somebody take down notes for you using the audiobooks. If you're going to college, it would be important to be able to tell your college, if you're meeting with a disability counselor, somebody in the disability area of college who helps you prepare for college and determine what accommodations you need, knowing that, hey, audiobooks have really helped me, can be helpful. And that's something like having a portfolio can help you. I guess it's all documented. So when you can walk through that portfolio as a student or a person with a disability, you could walk through your portfolio with somebody and not just have to remember everything. It's all documented in that portfolio. So that can be helpful. Again, medical experiences, we talked about some students have food allergies, maybe carry EpiPens. So having information in the portfolio like that could be helpful. That would be up to maybe a student to determine what to include or disclose about their disability or diagnosis. If a student has epilepsy, they may want people to understand more about that and what their epilepsy looks like, how to react in a situation with that, who their emergency contacts, things like that are. So things like that can be included in a portfolio as well. Again, we talked about community involvement. You could be involved in like an animal shelter, things like that. So any of that could be helpful. Artwork. Again, a lot of students are good at art, have a lot of artwork. It really kind of can showcase their personality and their interests. So that could be something that would be helpful. So we've kind of covered a lot of things that can be included in a portfolio. So I want to talk about different formats. So you can definitely do like a scrapbook method if you want, where you gain your information and put that in, create your own scrapbook by buying a scrapbook paper, things like that. Some people we've seen have had booklets created. I've saw really nice portfolios where a booklet was created, where they actually had it printed somewhere as a booklet and then probably had so many copies made and passed those out, to maybe IEP team members, people in the community, things like that. Some people have done a brochure format, or even used Microsoft Word and included pictures and text and things like that. So there are tons of different ways. There's no wrong format. It's just kind of what works for you. Now with technology getting more and more popular, as we go on, there's always new technology. So we're seeing a lot of digital portfolios or things like that. So through Canva or PowerPoint, are a lot more digital portfolios. We've also seen a lot more like digital storytelling, a student creating in Canva a digital story, just kind of highlighting their strengths, their journey, things like that, their story through a video through Canva, and that can be really powerful as well. We do have a webinar archived on that could be helpful if you want to learn more about digital storytelling, and we can, definitely get that link to you if you want that. So just let us know. Or if you have any questions about digital storytelling or portfolio formats and things like that, you can definitely contact our office and we'd be happy to, try to walk you through that and help you to the best of our ability. So thinking about creating a portfolio, I think for anybody, it can be kind of overwhelming if you're a student or a parent or somebody like, where do we start? Like, who can we ask for help? So, anybody you can reach out to anybody in your support team. Parents and caregivers can help their children. A family member can help a person. A teacher can help a student create a portfolio. Also, peers and friends can really help a student or a friend create their portfolio. They probably have some of the best information about that student and know so much about them and can really be involved. That's one thing we didn't really talk about though, but just even highlighting friendships and things like that in your portfolio, I guess that a peer or a friend could be part of that support system, and you highlight photos of things that you've done with your friends, things that are important to you. Other agencies, like a Family Matters, if you have questions about resources and portfolios and how to use different formats, we're pretty familiar with Microsoft Word and PowerPoint and Canva, things like that. So if you have questions, if we don't know it, we can try to figure it out. But really reaching out to agencies for help if you need that is an option. So person-centered planning, if you want to think about person-centered planning, doing a map or an action plan for your child, this is something that we have staff that have been trained in as well. So a lot of times, because we cover such a large area, we do meet virtually with people and try to help create like a map or a person-centered plan through something like Canva. And then we can give you a link to a person-centered plan that can be shared with an IEP team or anybody that you want to view your portfolio. We always do say that you want to be careful who you share information with, because when it's out there, it's out there. But with a link, it's kind of like you can kind of choose who to share it with, or it could be downloaded even through Canva. You could get a link where people you share it with can view it, or even download that portfolio and have a paper copy that you print off and share with people. So person-centered planning can really just be used to help a person with a disability identify their strengths, their area of need, their support system, who their support team is, who they can potentially share their portfolio with. So it is an option. I mean, the person-centered planning is centered on that student or that person with a disability, and they have a team to support them in creating that. And that team's there to support that person and help them talk about their goals, their strengths, their areas of need, and really identify and walk through, what next steps they want to take to reach those goals. So that can be really helpful. So again, if you're interested in learning more about person-centered planning, do not hesitate to reach out to us. This is a plan that we just kind of, to show you kind of a person-centered plan, this is one format you could use. So we took Abby, my coworker, and just kind of made a plan. So you would just kind of start with like, what's Abby's story? What does she want people to know about her? What are her gifts and strengths? Abby's, really good at these things. So let's list them here. And you would write like Abby's story. What does she want people to know about her here? Her gifts and strengths we would document here. And this is where like having a team around that person that is creating the plan that the plan's for can really help, because sometimes, we all may be able to say, these are the things I struggle with, but it may be more difficult to say, these are the things I'm good at. For some reason, that just seems hard for a lot of us. So identifying those gifts and strengths and putting them here. Like you may say, I just see you reading all the time and you have so much knowledge about, Pokemon or, whatever they have knowledge about. You're really good at math, or look, you won an award for public speaking. So let's list those things here. You have gifts in those areas, and just saying, not everybody has that strength. We all have different strengths and areas of need. And dreams, like really identifying what is that student or person's dreams. What are their fears? Do they have fears about not reaching their dreams, or what it's going to take to achieve those dreams? And then looking at what supports are helpful. So if they do well, they love to read, but maybe their processing speed is slower. Really focusing on like what helps you to be successful with reading. So you use like Learning Ally or Bookshare or audiobooks, things like that. You could list those things. Those are a support you use that help you to be successful. Still lets you access reading. And it's, just a support that helps you be successful and lets you do what you love. And then looking at like, you have dreams and goals. So what action are we going to take, or do you need to take, and who's going to help you do that? And, just really just kind of identifying what your main goals are. And it may be, if you're planning for an IEP, this plan can be helpful for students to show these are my goals for the next year. Or if you're transition age, again, these are goals that are going to go beyond high school. So your portfolio can really be shared with a lot of different people. It really just depends on who is your target audience. And that's one thing that you may want to talk with a student about, or whoever you're creating that portfolio with or is creating their portfolio. Do you want to share it if you're still in school? Maybe your IEP team members, family members, things like that would be important. Or you may find it would be important to share it even if you're still in school. If you have goals to work in the community, at your local hospital, animal shelter, library, things like that, you may want to share it with people in your community and build relationships. You know, you never know how sharing that portfolio would help you. It may be something that you want to share with colleges and post-secondary education. You know, if you're pursuing a career or college career, you know, who can I share it with at my local college or at my college of choice that I'm interested in? Future employers, like we said, if you know, have volunteered somewhere and you're interested in maybe that turning into a paid position, employee to be employed somewhere, maybe sharing it with a place you volunteer. Family members, like we said, parents, caregivers, you know, there's lots of different places. You could share it with, you know, an agency if they're helping you. If you're working with somebody that's helping you with employment, like a job coach or something, sharing your portfolio with your job coach could be helpful. It might give a job coach a better idea of who you are and what your interests are and how to help try to connect you with a job that's fitting for you. Okay, so we wanted to go through some different examples. These are just some different examples of, you know, kind of ways you can set up portfolios. Again, they're just examples. You can kind of be creative with it. There's no real right or wrong answer for how to set these up. You know, you can think of a catchy title. This one, we just have it, you know, about me, things that you want somebody to know about you. If you're still in school, you can put your name. Again, you can decide, do I want to include just my first name, first and last name? If you're in school, what grade are you in? A photo, you can include a photo of you on the cover. So that's just one example. Another example would be, you know, including information about me, learning style. What do I want to, if you're in school or going into college or even for a job, like what is my learning style? Do I learn things better auditorily? Am I more a visual learner? Like what methods of learning do I do best with? What are my strengths? I make people laugh. I'm a good friend. I'm good at reading. Dislikes, I don't really like math. Those are things that could be helpful to include. Your interests, I like games, I like dancing, reading. So if you're in school and you like dancing, do you realize like there's homecoming, prom, things like that? It might help, you know, others think of experiences that you might enjoy. If you like reading, is there a club in school or at college? Is there something that, you know, you could get involved in, or through a job? You know, if you share it with coworkers, maybe they have a book club or something that might be of interest to you. So you never know in what ways sharing that information might help you make connections. So you can also share information about communication. What form of communication or method of communication do I use? I communicate verbally. I use a communication device, sign language, use a different assistive technology to help me with communication. So these are things that you could consider including in a portfolio. You know, even saying things like, okay, when communicating with me, speak clearly, speak slowly, give me time to process what you've said. Those are important things. Like people don't always recognize that. So if you include that in a portfolio, that's going to be helpful for really multiple people, whether that be an educator at your school, you know, somebody in your community, if you're volunteering at college, a future or like an employer or somebody you're job shadowing with or volunteering with, it's going to help you in a lot of different locations. So, and if you have something like a communication device or use sign language, you could include more information as you see fit to, you know, help educate those that are, you know, you're involved with, to understand your style of communication better and how they can communicate with you. Work skills, you could think about in this process, what are my work skills? I've job shadowed, I've volunteered. Am I good with people? I'm on time, I'm dependable. Those are all important things to include in a portfolio to show, like, I always get to work on time, or my volunteer position, or I'm always to school on time, things like that. So that can be helpful in a lot of situations. Any work experience you've had, you can set up like photos and include your job shadowing experience, volunteering, any paid jobs you've had. That can all be included in a portfolio. Career goals, you can include things that you've done. Or what you want to do. Like, I want to help people. I want to work with animals. I'd like to work in the office, maybe at a movie theater. Really showing what your interests are and what your goals for a career are can be helpful. And you can create a page just dedicated for that. So we do have some different resources listed on this slide. So we have, a link to the parent guide through the Illinois State Board of Education. The Parent Center Hub has a lot of great information on student involvement. And then we also have information from PACER on transition and person-centered plans, things like that. So those are all great resources you can visit and gain more information kind of to help you with this process as well. That is, oops, I think I took you to the parent guide there. So okay, so I'm having trouble getting to the last slide, but that is our presentation. So I do want to open it up for any questions that anybody may have. So somebody does have a question or comment in the chat. It says, let me go ahead and stop the recording real quick.